Ready to roll? All right, we will call the meeting to order. Jen, take roll, please.
Commissioner Corbin?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Waldner?
Here.
Commissioner Thel?
Here.
Mayor Lindsay?
Here. You have attached the minutes of our June 29th meeting.
Motion to approve minutes from June, motion to approve minutes from June 22nd.
Second.
Second or ninth?
Well, I'm on the wrong one, night.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever,
Okay.
whatever.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You have before you tonight's agenda.
Make a motion to approve the July 6th agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Appearances, acknowledgements, and correspondence. South Dakota Department of Transportation and H.R. Green representatives are here to discuss the hydraulic drainage analysis of Highway 34 reconstruction project. And whoever is going to be the speaker, I'd really appreciate it in that if you would have the microphone close, because this is recorded, and we do have people that like to listen to it at home and hear what's being said. So whoever's going to speak first and that, we will give you the floor. If you would announce your name and that, I'd appreciate it as well.
Sure. Do a quick introduction. My name is Travis Dress, and I'm with the South Dakota Department of Transportation. I'm the area engineer. I'd like to thank the mayor, commissioners, and the public for giving us this opportunity to come up here today and talk about the project. We are planning to reconstruct Highway 34 through Madison, tentatively scheduled for 2016 and 2019. And we're here today to talk a little bit about the project, more specifically the hydraulics and the analysis. For this project, the Department of Transportation hired H.R. Green, their consultant out of Sioux Falls, to do the design and analysis for the project and assemble the plan sets. So at this point, I will, Mike Ryan here is with H.R. Green. He's a member of the project team. He's a hydraulics engineer, and he'll be talking a little bit today about the hydraulics on the project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thank you. Does this always have to be handheld, or is it?
No. And you're also welcome to have a chair. Pull a chair out there and sit down too. Then you can get to your computer a little easier. No, you don't have to handhold it. It's just have it close so that people at home can hear better.
It does a pretty good job picking you up.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, the first thing I need is my glasses.
Very good. And just point of clarification in that for those people who are listening to it, hydraulics is the water drainage.
Yeah, mainly this is gonna deal with the stormwater.
Yes.
Process of modeling, getting to a point where we know our pipe sizes and details of the actual drainage for the highway. Plus it gets into some of the city criteria in terms of, creates the no-rise certification requirements in the city floodplain development. So it's kind of a historical basis so far, bringing everybody up to date as to what we've been doing relative to some of the drainage issues. So I'm going to get into a little bit of introduction of background and some of the methods, and I'll get into some of the numbers. I'm kind of a numbers guy in that regard, but I can leave plenty of time in the end for any questions of that, because, I deal with it every day, so, I get kind of brain locked on what I'm saying, and I have to back up sometimes and go into greater detail on how some things are done that I do every day. And then some of the concerns, and to discuss some of those items that, deal more with the reality of, heavy rainfall, heavy flooding, that type of thing. Okay, scope of work, of course, is Highway 34. What I affectionately call the east-west segment is Northeast 2nd Street from Highway 81 to Washington Avenue. And then the north-south section from 2nd to Southeast 10th Street. So we're dealing with both of those, although they're separate projects from a lighting and construction standpoint. From a drainage design, we've kind of lumped it together to do all the issues together to make it more uniform and actually easier on everybody from a calculation standpoint. When we first started looking at this, we're working with DOT on DOT highway projects, they have a lot of their own drainage criteria. Of course, when we're in cities or in counties, there's also other drainage criteria we have to consider. So we're looking at really, in this case, both the city of Madison criteria and the DOT. So we consider in setting up our hydraulic and hydrologic models. And when I use that term, mainly it's taking rainfall values, soil information, imperviousness, amount of pavement, amount of houses, amount of commercial development. We put them in a kind of a mathematical model and develop flows that are generally used to design the pipes and look at street overflow, spreads on that. So it's kind of a process to get to the sizing of pipes and intakes, allowable spread and structure spacing. That criteria is based on, leaving a certain amount of area open during a storm event so people can drive. We've all seen flooded curbs and that. In most cases, we want some driving path available so people aren't flooded out. Outfall design, consideration of where we're gonna outfall. For the community, no-rise certification. If you're familiar with that, that's a FEMA requirement that when you're dealing with regulatory floodplain, such as the Two Creeks, Plum Silver, that we're dealing with, have a no-rise certification that we don't raise the 100-year floodway value or impinge on it or encroach on it, as we call it. And also, in working with Chad, we looked at some peak-on-peak analysis. And then we obviously know, as we get this process evolved, of applying for the city floodplain development permit. So when I talked about some different criteria, for storm sewer design, we generally look at not a major flood event size of the pipes, because that really becomes too expensive. We look in combination with street overflow and pipe size, and over years and years, 2 and 5 year design storms, that meaning that you design a pipe to handle a 2-year or 5-year storm. That's generally been acceptable and brought in for residential and municipal areas. DOT process, they generally look at a larger storm, in this case a 10-year storm, where they're sizing the pipe to handle the 10-year rainfall, coming in the intakes on the street, and having some spread calculations involved where, they have a maximum of spread where they want to keep the driving lane free. There's always storms higher than that, but it's from an economical standpoint, the 2, 5, 10-year, pretty much probably 90% of the communities in America use that type of criterion. And most of the DOT use a 10-year design criteria on their pipe design. During bigger events. Sure.
Can I throw some question?
Yes.
When you're talking about that with the driving lane, okay, so it's a 5-lane. Are you talking big enough pipe so it starts draining to keep at least one of the driving lanes?
Yeah, what we had on, especially the east-west segment,
Yep.
that's a very flat segment, and generally the spread is limited to 8 feet on the DOT criteria. There are some spots we had to have a variance of 13 feet, because otherwise we're just having intake after intake after intake.
Right.
And it's just so flat that you really don't get a chance to get that water to move in towards the intake very fast.
Okay.
So, it's either 8 or in those flat spots, gonna be a 13-foot spread.
Okay.
And that doesn't apply necessarily to each side, because you may have more drainage area coming in this case,
Off
on
one side or
east-west from the north.
Right.
It creates that large spread effect, while the south side of the highway may not be over 2 or 3 feet,
Right.
because a lot of that drainage goes south.
Goes south anyway, yeah.
Rainfall, and so, you can see some of the criteria here, and pretty much the gist of this slide here is to say, there's different things based on the community that we're in, the client, and different things you've gotta consider in terms of the criteria. It's never standardized from one city to another, and we look at it from having to comply with both in this case.
One question on that slide right there. just looking down through it, minimum time of concentration, 5 minutes. Could you explain what that
Time
really means?
concentration is the time we look at from runoff to start its travel path to the point of interest. Now, I'm gonna give an example. Say from a house to the street.
1 second. He needs you.
Could I get your keys for a moment, or could you step up for just a second? I'm sorry about it.
You can answer, you can go ahead and answer
I'll
the
come back,
question.
she comes back.
Okay.
But it's a good point. Time concentration mainly is travel path. Saying how long the runoff is gonna take to get from A to B.
Thanks.
And B generally being a point of interest of like an intake, the creek itself. I was just kind of summarizing, it's the travel path of interest that water would take from one point to another.
Okay.
And there's time concentration travel, there's different scenarios of naming it. But it's essential calculation to develop, and we'll talk more about this. Looking at, look at a whole big watershed, we break it up into different areas. And timing is very critical and when that peak occurs. Because you can have a peak occur in the lower end, come in, get flushed out before the big area comes in and gets into town, for instance. And we'll talk more about this later.
Okay.
And especially.
Yeah, just the 5 minutes caught my attention
Yeah,
as to,
well,
you know.
that's criteria. I mean, theoretically, you can go and say, I got a 1 minute time of concentration. It's almost, most of the communities, the state standards have limited it to 5 minutes. And, you know, the technology available, you can down to 1 minute if you wanted to, but you get into some large processing times and understanding. You can get up to time of concentration too, you know, you look at your bigger watersheds, you may get up into hours or days, you know, if you think of big river systems like the Missouri or some of the big Sioux River, you know, where you're looking at a time of concentration, maybe to look at when it's gonna flood, and then you're looking at travel times and different scenarios.
Okay, no, very good.
At the bottom of the inlet and manhole spaces, primarily that's with maintenance and concern. When you get a bigger pipe, you have less chance of clogging and plugging, so some different spacings involved in manholes and inlet spaces. Okay, so I'll get into some things, and probably if you have any questions, please stop me and ask. Okay, so when we started the drainage design, we were looking at the east-west segment, and I touched on a little bit how a lot of the drainage right now comes to the street from the north.
Mhm.
And a lot of it goes south across the street in pipes or even an overflow in a big storm scenario. General DOT criteria is to carry their own drainage on their own right-of-way. And what that meant is we were gonna look at a pipe system that stayed on Highway 34 to get to an outlet. So what we saw was we had to reconfigure some areas to drain to the street that currently drain south of it. Just from the standpoint, right now they may drain to the south curb of the street, but then come around and drain down south on the side street. So we looked at a system that stayed on the right of way, in this case going from west to east to Park Creek, and then looked at the results of, you know, we're changing some drainage areas going, that we thought maybe we're going to Silver Creek, after now go to Park Creek. And I've got some numbers I'll talk about later. So we went in later with the storm sewer design and did a hydrologic analysis of the entire watershed. And we had some computer models available from Chad giving us some, and then we got some from Icon Engineering that did the flood insurance work for FEMA. And what we were going to do then is compare timing, and I touched on that timing of, you know, what happens if we add a little bit more area to the Park Creek drainage system, how's that gonna affect flooding? And that's primarily the questions we wanted to pose to ourselves.
That's good to hear. The community's a little sensitive to floods.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Are you gonna continue to have it go down West Avenue and Union and Blanche?
Well,
Yep.
the city systems stay the same, only we have to intercept some of that highway drainage. It's not gonna go across from north to south across 34.
No, I understand that, but we got manholes and we got sewer lines, storm sewer lines going south down
Right.
West Avenue and, Union and Blanche,
They will
and they
stay.
dump into Silver Creek to take the load off of this creek here.
Correct, yeah, and I think there's some maybe interconnections that take some of it back over to Park, lower down the system. But we're not touching the city systems away from the right of way,
Okay,
so they would continue to function in that regard. And Chad, if I say something out of line, you know, just not correct, just let me
But-
know.
But currently, some of 34 water goes south.
Correct, yes,
Will that stay the same?
will that continue to go south?
no.
You're
So it's all
gonna
gonna come to Park Creek,
no.
down 34?
And I'll show you drainage area in that,
Sure.
what's gonna go to Park.
Okay,
If it presently on the surface drains south,
which most areas don't.
most areas on what our system will have is
Uh-huh.
on the north side, and they drain into the city systems that get to the south of Second. Maybe I should advance to that. Okay. This is the Second Street areas that the new storm sewer will pick up.
And bring east.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So you're
you
gonna
can
dump,
see most of it here is on the north side, this being the
Mhm.
alignment. Some over here is gonna drain back. This area drains back. But all this would continue on its present course.
going south to,
But I
Silver.
don't think it all goes to Silver by looking at your storm sewer system. Some of it, there's some connections that we believe that actually take it over down here to Park.
okay, okay.
Large interceptor sewer.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Which,
So-
Subway.
We went back and got that whole watershed model, and, you know, here's Park Creek up here. I think the current Madison corporate limits, and then Silver Creek watershed right in here. And just throw out some numbers in here. The Park Creek where it combines with Silver, it's got a watershed of 13,400 acres. And then Silver Creek has 3,020 acres. Our area, we have about, the new acreage is about 50 acres to park on this system. We think, now, you know, in discussing what goes north or south, if we did it strictly by topography and didn't know anything about the interceptor, we looked at what we're sending south and what we're sending to the east. And we took about 21.6 acres that's gonna be picked up by Second that we thought went to Silver or south. And I shouldn't say just went to Silver because I'm not sure all of it goes, you know, we've got some cross connections. On the Silver Creek system, we took 8.7 acres that went to Park and are gonna put that down to the Silver Creek. And primarily, again, you can see that acreages we were picking up with our highway system. Now, we do have a connection across that 72 that we have to actually go right through, so there's gonna be some division. It's kind of in a location, we can't go below it and drain to Silver Creek. We can't go above it because it's such a large pipe that we would not be able to effectively drain ours because we can't get over it and not surface the pipe out. So, the best thing we have for a recommendation on that is actually, they actually intercept like this, and they'll have to divide up flow. But we have capacity going south to handle everything that we bring to that point. But from a low flow standpoint, there may be an uneven split, because we don't have the same inverts.
Mhm.
And that 72 is a 10-year design as we understand it. So it's got a lot of capacity, but it was designed that way, I'm sure, because they needed a lot of capacity to pick up some of the problem areas. Okay, so I want to go back. So what we ended up doing to look at, are we going to add problems to the peak flows? We took the model and the sub-basins that were developed as a part of that original model, and when I say sub-basins, like this one, number 30, is that Park Creek tributary. 20 is the main channel of Park Creek. This one is a western area. This was in the original model. And so we went in and broke this up, and we measured what we're contributing, and I'll speak more to this later, but our process was to use that existing model with FEMA that they use to develop the floodplain. So this is a model that says, okay, this is how much water you're gonna have. There's another model that says, okay, this is the depth it's gonna be in the streets, and it's called a water surface profile model. And that's used to show your actual floodplain area. So there's two things that you need. One is how much, and then where's it going? And that's kind of the two results of those models. So we broke our areas out to look at, okay, let's design our pipe system for the highway. And this is the breakout that we had, looking at, we have to look at each intersection of the streets. We have to compute the flow coming down towards Park Creek, design our intake locations accordingly, make sure we're not exceeding that spread. So we have to maintain that criteria. So it's kind of an iterative process. And we do this for the 10-year storm, and we also looking at the 100-year storm. And then we did that same principle apply to Silver Creek, at the Washington Avenue system. Okay, so the sum of that was that we'd gotten that hydrology model and looked at FEMA discharges, and then broke down our storm sewer area in that model and said, okay, how much does this contribute and when does it contribute? And I mentioned the large drainage area that you've got, the 21 square miles, and the small drainage area. What happens, I mean, from a flooding standpoint, the real peak is yet to come in when the storm sewer peaks out. And it's a timing thing, You kind of think, well, we've got 50 acres plus minus acres coming in, we're, blocks from the creek. And, if you have that same storm event applied, it's gonna take a long time for that peak to come down the whole watershed and get into the same location. So from our standpoint, we think, well, this comes in, flushes out before the real peak flood occurrence happens. And that's in regard to the FEMA floodplain. We're not adding that to that floodplain instance. Now, beyond that, in working with the city, we looked at a peak-on-peak analysis. And what that says, okay, under some scenario is if you have this 50 acres coming in at its biggest rate at the same time the watershed delivers, then what happens? Now, it's not something that would be considered normally because of the timing difference, but we just looked at some numbers, and we would see theoretically an increase. But if that occurred, you'd have to apply that same logic to all the sub-watersheds and say the peak's gonna occur on that all at the same time. So if we had a 24-hour rainfall, for instance, we'd have to say, okay, everything is gonna peak out at 12 hours instead of second peaking out at 1 hour and the rest of the watershed at 12 hours. So, from that standpoint, we would see an increase, but that's not how, I mean, that's not gonna apply to your floodplain, and it's kind of a theoretical exercise in a sense. What we look at to develop flows, we look, you know, rainfall records have been around forever, and each year, you know, they get added to, much like life insurance figures, you know, how long people live. The more information we have, the better we get. Now, we recently, NOAA, the Weather Service, issued new rainfall rates, and they're actually, you're seeing, they're climbing, you know, in the sense of, you see everything seems to be going up. And we're using the DOT, that, what they call the Hydro 35, very similar to that, on that. So we look at the rainfall rates, and from a hydrology standpoint, if you're looking at a watershed, you get beyond 10 square miles, and then we have to start distributing the rainfall in a different pattern. They call it an aerial distribution. 10 square miles seems to be just a point where they say, well, you probably wouldn't have the same rainfall event over a 20 square mile. You may have 5 inches here, you may have 4. And we see that in, you know, in every town. Your neighbor gets, you know, 5 inches and think he's crazy because you only got 2 inches, you know. But, and we see that a lot in rural areas especially. So the fact that they used the same rainfall, 20 square miles, is kind of unusual, but that's okay. They accept it. But it probably gives a bigger floodplain than if they would have said, okay, we have to break this rainfall distribution up. So, you know, you can have an instance, you know, anything's possible in a theoretical sense of you could have any type of storm. You know, we look at, you know, standardized frequencies, calculated estimated rainfall frequencies to develop numbers. And that's used in regulatory purposes to get floodplains and storm sewer designs and all that. From our standpoint, we don't think that moving the water over to Park Creek is going to cause additional flooding. It's going to cause some additional water maybe, but the flooding problems will probably more result from other issues within creek capacity and that type of thing. And I guess the same would be said for Silver, although we're probably in a better situation there.
So now, when you were talking earlier and talking about, you know, the sizing of the drains and the sizing of the pipe, to put 8 feet or 13 feet onto the roadway. Now, eventually in that, some of that is going to follow the roadway all the way down and enter in on that, or?
The 8 and 13 are
Mhm.
the spread that are going to, the maximum spread we want, going to intakes.
Yes.
So it would be reduced once it gets that intake and past it. So we're not exceeding that 13, we're getting 13 max before it gets to the next intake.
Before it gets to the next intake?
Then
Okay.
Then it drops down. We always have some bypass, you know, that's expected. An intake can't
Mhm.
necessarily get 100% efficiency unless it's in a low point. So it's all, and that's figured in too, because that bypass is tracked and it's added to
The next 8 or
Yeah,
13
the
feet.
process, it's,
Yes.
yeah.
So when I look at, I'll call it the South Washington,
Sure.
on that area, you know, what was it, a few weeks ago, we had that big storm and everything, and you could just tell where the water backed up, you know, by that drainage. That intake wasn't big enough, or the event was too big for it to handle. Is that going to, you know, I'm sure that maybe the second lane, I think, would look or appear just from the gravel and, you know, stuff that was up on the road, you could see how far back the water was. And is that something where that's still within the standards, or are we not going to see that again?
We're gonna, well, I won't,
Could probably see it again,
I
or,
mean, there's certain instances
yeah,
you know, if you get
major,
a 50, 100-year type storm,
Event,
you're gonna
yeah.
see the roadway covered.
sure,
That, and I think you're probably referencing north.
By
Yeah,
Lewis.
I think it's
By
right,
Lewis.
right by the creek there,
Yeah.
yeah, Lewis and,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some of the
Shopko
more
there.
flat areas too.
Yeah.
That we have to contend with,
okay.
and more intakes.
And there's so much blacktop there that all converges from both the north and the south to that one central
Right.
drop.
We'll have more intakes picking that up on the street.
Kind of help with it.
Yeah, is the status of the back green?
We're proceeding with it, it's just ownership.
Yeah, that would,
You have a picture to, Maryland?
oh, okay, I may zoom to that.
See, what he's talking about is that drains all from Southwest 10th and where the new, eye doctor and, the chiropractor is down there and Classic Corner, that all goes north and up to where that creek is, we're in front of Lewis, and then it comes from the top of the hill, and it's got all blacktop parking lots.
Converges there.
Yeah, and it's, years ago when that pipe was put in, it was designed for very little, but we've had a lot of building and stuff out there, and it's just overloaded now.
So are you like more into this area then, upper? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Shopko, Lewis,
Sure,
just
yeah.
right where the.
Montgomery's.
It's about right where the creek is
Yeah,
at, I mean,
yeah.
it's right where. I just noticed that, you know, and as you were talking about that, because, again, from a safety perspective, you know, the sooner you can drain that water off the road, the better, and, you know, for people just traveling, and they always just have to drive right through it, and it's like, really, just.
We got the same problem up by ProBuilt too.
Mhm.
I think one of those pictures showed that where a lot of that runoff was coming off of that parking lot right there.
Yeah.
And going directly onto the road, this design has some area drains behind the curb to take that water in before it actually reaches the roadway and get into the storm sewer system.
Cool, good.
Because we were getting so much, without it, we were getting so much runoff onto the, you know, it come to the driveway and just dump so much right on the highway, and we couldn't get our spread criteria, so we had to kind of go back and see if we could intercept it off the curb.
Very good.
Good, I'm glad somebody's
Mhm.
keeping an eye on that.
Okay. So, the no rise certification, what that requirement is, it kind of stems from the city being in the National Flood Insurance Program. And when there's activity in a regulated floodway, then FEMA requires the community, Laurel County or whatever the governing body may be, to have on record a no rise certification. And that means that someone's not coming in and causing an increase in floodway elevation. And the floodway is meant to be the concept of, we need this much area reserved to convey the 100-year flood. You have a floodplain, and then you also have a floodway, and a detailed study. And the difference is that in a floodplain, you can develop by building up. And the floodway is the limit of where no other building is allowed within those 2 lines. It's a mathematical process of where you say, okay, I'm gonna push this floodplain in, and as you push that water in, it's gonna increase, and you can increase it up to 1 foot maximum. And so, when you do a flood insurance study and wanna develop a floodway, that's the process you do in the computerized hydraulic model that actually say, okay, I'm gonna push it in. We've got methods to estimate 1 foot. You know, sometimes it always can't be a foot increase, because if you do a foot here, maybe upstream it's 1.2 or 1.3 feet, so you have to back off. That's why you see floodway lines kind of going down sometimes. But on the east-west segment, we weren't really affecting the floodplain with our road profile or our storm sewer system. If we look at Silver Creek, there we're reconstructing that whole road through the floodplain there. So it was deemed that we should supply no rise certificates for both, but what we had to do on Silver Creek is actually go to the hydraulic model. And we had an iterative process, because when Krista changes the roadway, profile, the height of the center line, all that, I have to look at it in the hydraulic model and say, okay, here you're getting road over top of Silver Creek. Actually, both of you, but Silver Creek, if we change that road profile, it changes that over the road flow. And that changes the floodway. So we went through quite a bit of iterative process. We dropped the sidewalks down so that they're not, normally a sidewalk flows to the curb. Drop them down so they flow back or flat. And in the end, kept our road profile at or below the existing one in the floodplain section. That's the only way we get to no rise. If you don't get a no rise, then you have to get a map change. And what happened in our instance, the models can be very finicky. You can actually drop downstream, and the model may compensate and actually see an increase above current conditions upstream. And you can work 24 hours a day and not get it changed, because if you change things, you have to justify it. The only thing we could do to compensate is keep that roadway the same as the FEMA model. And we did that, and that was late last week. And I've got to get that finalized with Chad and Ryan, and they've got the results, but I've got to finalize it. And we feel we have the no rise met on both Silver and Park Creek.
Because that is a big concern when you get down past Subway. You've got Campbell Supply, which is sitting low and, has been flooded before.
Right.
And now you're bringing more water down that direction. And it's my understanding in that water's going to be introduced into the culvert
Correct.
there. And so when you have water flowing one way and you have water coming into it, it does slow down the water going through, which could back it back up the other way. So, yeah, there is a lot of concern, about that drainage of that water, no question. So,
How often do they get flooded?
well, they've been flooded a number of times since I've lived here, and since '78.
Seems like about every
Quantity in
5
that I
years
can't tell you, but,
something significant.
in one instance, when we had the flood in '93, part of what added to it was a pickup that was parked along the creek, washed into the creek, and plugged a portion of the drainage. And so there, if you look at the '93 flood, you'll see the water just surging over the top of that bridge, and so that was from, the pickup getting in the creek. But other years than that, when we've had, that's why the 5 minutes kind of caught my attention there, because it usually rains for more than 5 minutes,
Well,
And so, that water has time to come down, and then when you go down through that part of town, it is low quite a bit in there, and so,
Well, the 5 minutes is kind of based on the individual area we're looking at. It's not necessarily the whole thing, it's all kind of additive, like on the, if I go back and, if I look at, the western end, maybe that's 5 minutes to get to the street, but that flow maybe takes 20 minutes to get over to Washington, So it's kind of additive in that sense, but what it's doing is kind of tracking them all. Saying, okay, this one's coming in at 5, this one's coming in at 8, and when they meet, it recalculates that amount.
You get the amount of water from Second and Lincoln on east, they're gonna be in overshoes getting out of their houses, and it's just not gonna be a good deal if you overload that creek to, look at them people, 'cause everything is getting lower as you go. It starts right there at Second and Lincoln, and it goes on down to Center, and everything on east is just in the low area.
and, I haven't gone over it with Chad or anything like that, but back when we had the flood in '93, a lot of homes along Silver Creek were bought and moved. You know, and so, Silver Creek probably has fewer residents, you know, along there than Park Creek does, you know, that would be affected by the water. And that was kind of, you know, one of the thoughts, you know, as to, we have drains now further toward the Pizza Ranch that connect and send that water south, you know, and the question is, are we still going to have those to take some of that water away to the south rather than bring all of the water east?
Well, those will still function to take everything that you see south of the purple line there.
But that's not off 34, which currently, some of the water on 34 does go south.
Correct, yes.
You
I don't
know.
think we have a good handle. We have to model that whole city system and look at actually if they're cross-connected, how much is going back to Park and how much is going to Silver.
You're saying once it heads south off of 34, then it's our city
Right.
grabbing it and doing an interconnect and sending it which way, and so, which is probably pretty much out of scope of this project, but, and it's certainly not impacting it any worse, or it's not gonna be any worse than what it is today.
Well, you're gonna have more water going east, because the water that currently goes south in 3 locations now will all be going east. Currently, 34 drains
I
south
see what
in
you're
3
saying.
locations.
And I just
And
don't,
so if we had a major where the storm sewer filled up, it would allow some of it to go to Silver Creek instead of all of it now having to come to Park.
and I just don't wanna put our water treatment plant in jeopardy because we're running it all down east of Subway and into one creek where we could be running it like we are right now down West Avenue and Union and Blanche, and because it's not gonna be good if we get a 4 or 5 inch rain on a short period of time like Chester got last night, you know, it's,
And so currently, you know, there is relief, you know, going to the south, and that from 34. Where on here, bringing it all east is sending it through a different part of town. And that is a real concern.
How much area are you changing in the watershed?
We have, we're picking up 21.6 acres, primarily in the north.
How much is the total watershed for?
From 50 going to Park.
Right. What do you mean 50?
50 acres.
But I mean the total. What are we adding? We're just adding a sliver of watershed.
No, he mentioned in here 21 acres, and that we're going to Silver Creek will be picked up by Second and go to Park.
But
And
collectively, all the water flowing through
8.7
the
acres
creek.
will, from that, where Park will now be going to Silver Creek. So basically, if I wrote those down correctly in that, you know, we're adding an additional 12 acres of water coming east.
But we're adding it to like, how many acres is this watershed that comes through?
50 acres.
No,
No, 13,000.
Oh,
We're adding-
13,000
we're adding
acres.
additional-
Got it, right, 13,000 acres.
12 acres to how many?
I got, at the mouth, where Silver and Park, or they meet, I've got 13,440 acres, just from the
So
north.
we're adding a fraction, and it's gonna flow through way before the rest of the watershed drains through town. Correct?
Yes.
In a short rain.
Well, in a short rain, we aren't gonna flood town, are we? What's the
No.
shortest rain that's ever flooded Madison?
Well, I guess what I'm looking at is if you look at 93, it went on for what, about 4 hours? 5 hours? You
But
know,
it's-
Last night it went on for,
It's a fraction
Hour and
of
a half.
acres to,
I think you're saying that.
the water is an accumulation of all the watershed.
No, adding it.
what's your feelings on it, Fred?
Well, as we sit there and look at it, it's gonna add a little bit to it, but I'm more inclined to agree with what Jeremiah was saying, it's just a fraction that you're gonna add to it. You got about 12 acres. The hope would be that everything coming off 34 actually would be
Yeah, see,
There was a gap there, you know, had all that rain hit us, and yeah, everything flooded us for a short amount of time. Then the next day, we were still fighting because everything from the north came in. So I think that's what he's referring to, you know, you get that, you call it 5 or 10 minutes rule, that, you know, you get that flushing effect and everything off the roads and stuff. And we know it.
see, in 2012, when you came in with us to fill sandbags and stuff, you had good size amount of water and coming down your street at that time, and we didn't have that. We had a lot of rain, but nothing like it was in '93. And you take all this coming down Second Street, we're just gonna, I just don't wanna back ourselves up in the corner and then say, have the taxpayers come back and say, why didn't you guys say something?
Well, what I'm having a little trouble understanding is, you're saying all this water that we're adding to the east end, but we're only adding 12 acres to the watershed itself, right?
Well, we're adding 21 acres that will, of in-town water. 21 of the 50 acres of in-town, 21 of it now will come down to Park instead of Silver. And 8 acres will go to Silver that now goes to Park.
Is it-
So the 12 is what I-
Is that eight of the 21 goes
Eight.
over?
Mhm.
So this is kind of swap.
Okay.
But in to your point, Nick, I'm not sure how much actually goes to Silver of that and it goes south because there's still that cross connection.
Mhm.
So you almost have to divide, you know, you get below Second, you know, you look at, there's contribution increase there, but there may be contribution coming across where the interceptor as well in the park.
My preference would be to still have those connections, the 3 connections that we have, so that if we have those heavy rains, that it could still alleviate some of it going south instead of bringing all of it east. Then it would leave the street pretty much like it is now in terms of drainage.
I think one thing too that is considered is that.
Because what I'm picturing is it has the option to go both ways. You know, if it's a low rain, it's gonna probably just keep going this way and some of it's gonna trickle off south. But on a heavy rain, you're gonna have it trickling, going both ways, to Park and to Silver. I'm picturing it as a T.
Yeah, I'm not
As
sure
a T.
the elevations can make that happen, but
Okay,
you know, because the one system, if we drain to Park, you know, we've got to have that continuous, you know, flowing slope.
mhm,
And all the intersections, the city system may be higher, for instance.
Okay.
And the other thing is you get into who's responsible if someone says, oh, you did that and I got flooded, I never got flooded before.
mhm.
And that they're south of 34, and then they pull DOT and say, your storm sewer system caused this problem. You know, maybe rational heads say, no, that isn't the case, but you know what happens.
Mhm.
I think.
When you're in the
I can't
thick of
speak
a
for Travis,
flood, rationality doesn't always exist.
but-
Right.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Very true.
You wanna fill a commission room,
Mhm.
have a flood.
Mm-hmm.
Chad, were you gonna add something to this?
Well, I was just gonna say, we've had a lot of time, because I knew there were these concerns. Obviously, we've been flooded in '93 and 2012. We've talked to many of you about these things, and I think a key part that may have been talked about, but is this, the DOT's policy is not to upgrade the city system. And their policy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I've heard this before, not to upgrade our system, for example, nor is it to send water from their roadway onto the city system. Currently, it is being done that way. For whatever reason, years back, it goes down Union and such like that. And so they went through these iterations and tried to demonstrate, as is presented here, that there will not be a negative impact when looked at from the expert analysis, so to speak, that we can take that off, take that water out of the city system. A side note is creating some additional capacity on the current city system, and they could still send it east, like is the proposed design, and not impact the no rise certificate. There'd be no rise in a 100-year event. Because in a 100-year event, everything's topping the roads anyway. It's gonna flood your whole watershed. The local system, this little small pipe system, is gonna be flushed through, and that's what you're saying essentially.
Right.
And so haven't taken this lightly, as they've had many design meetings about this, and, you know, that's a significant reason why they're here today, is we've been talking about asking, you know, the DOT and HR Green to come in and just explain this to the commission and the public, anybody who's willing to come. And, because this is a serious matter, and we wanna give it due diligence, and it appears that they've done a pretty sound job of looking at all different perspectives, particularly this peak-on-peak analysis, which is, in some ways extra, you know, over and above your 100-year floodplain analysis. So.
I understand, you know, I think if we look at a holistic view, you know, all the flooding problems that have occurred, you know, what would have changed if we add this? And I doubt that probably an infinitesimal change that would occur, even a 5-year storm, because you get such a terrific amount from the north, around that area, around the culvert. It's not to dismiss the flooding problems, but they probably would have been there regardless.
Yeah, you know, we have flooding issues. We just don't want to make them worse.
Oh, yeah, obviously, right. I can, if you want, hire me to model the whole thing. Hey, I'll have a hard time with the truck in the creek.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a tough one to plan for.
yeah.
Actually, having known that, we, in 2012, our police department actually pulled a bunch of vehicles back away from the creek as a proactive measure, and we had tow trucks moving vehicles at no charge to anybody, and so you do learn from stuff, but
Yeah.
I think the mayor said it best. We just don't want to make it worse than what we got now. We continually try to get better at it, you know. So.
I think. Any other questions from you?
I'm just going to open it up just a minute and just ask if there's any questions from the audience, because I noticed we've got a couple other people that are in here. Is there any questions that we haven't answered that, or asked that anyone in the audience? Okay. Okay, if not.
Thank you for the
Chad-
presentation.
Chad,
If
yeah.
I may, just to
Yes.
touch on the schedule for this project, this design is gonna proceed, unless something changes. In the near term, there'll be an agreement that comes forth from the South Dakota DOT that, among other things, covers our joint effort with the city's utilities. But then, this project is scheduled to be let this winter and start construction next year. And so I wanted the commission to really be able to hear this and have an open discussion, and to talk to these folks, get their contact information if you want to talk to them some more, you know.
And then, just one other thought came up, a question I had. During the project, is it planned to do the street in segments, or will the entire street be tore up all the way down for any like that? Do you know that?
What we plan on doing to sequence this project is to build it half at a time.
Half at a time? Okay.
We've hired HR Green, to put together the traffic control plans for the project. A lot of times they come back to us and ask what we would like to do, or how we'd like to sequence the project. This being an important thoroughfare through town, and a lot of businesses along, it's important that we maintain traffic at all times, so, what it will be is probably one lane in each direction, so there could be delays along there with left turning traffic, for instance, at intersections, they would be moving everybody up with the oncoming traffic, so traffic moving a little slowly, but the road will be open.
Okay, very good. Because that is a question that I was asked and I didn't have the answer.
I want to throw out one other thing, because I've seen you at a lot of meetings and stuff with people talking about this, and I think it's important also, and that's why I said it was good to know that somebody's looking at this drainage and everything along the way. And I know in one of the meetings, I mean, we had utilities, the internet companies were there, telephone companies, we had the gas company was there. And so, you know, it's important that I think the town understands and knows that this isn't just, well, let's hurry up and just throw on some cement and pavement and run with this deal. There's a lot of meetings that are going on behind the scenes that are happening. And so I appreciate, and I told them one other time, I appreciate you guys' efforts in doing that. I mean, this is, like you said, it's huge for our town and our community, and it is a major roadway through here, so.
And there's a lot of infrastructure underneath it that, you know, will be upgraded at the same
Yeah.
time. So it will be a big plus when it's done. Nobody likes being in the middle of them.
We've been having it for a year. With the north-south project getting moved out to 2019, you don't have those two consecutive years of
Yes.
construction, which helps kind of ease that a little bit.
It does.
But like you said, this is a good chance to upgrade those city utilities at the
Mhm.
same time the roadway's being replaced, so. I think that's a great
As an example, I have a business that is affected, and at the time it was put in, we had to connect to a 100-plus-year-old sewer connection. And so it's going to give us an opportunity to upgrade that.
Well, we're not doing that one.
Yeah. Scratch those ideas.
I think that's a pretty good signal.
Well, again, thank you in
Thank
that,
you
you
for
know,
coming.
for
Yeah.
giving the
Appreciate it.
presentation.
Thank
and-
you, very good.
And this, you know, really being recorded, and that helps the public if they want to hear questions and that and see the presentation, they'll be able to watch it at home.
I have some of my cards here as well, if anybody would like to take one, and you can call anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to number 2, acknowledge the June building permit report, which you have attached.
Motion to acknowledge June building permit report?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Acknowledge the May investment report, gross salaries and bills for ratification.
Questions at all tonight?
Pretty straightforward, Jen.
Pretty straightforward.
I'll make a motion that we acknowledge the May investment report, gross salaries and bills for ratification.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Acknowledge the temporary alcohol license applications and set a date of hearing for the Dakota State University Foundation. Jen, do you want to address that and give us a date on that?
Please, you have in front of you 4 applications for temporary alcohol licenses, all for Dakota State University Foundation. They simply brought in everything that they have got scheduled for the summer.
Mhm.
You will see 3 wedding dances and then a chamber mixer. I would ask that you acknowledge all of them this evening. We'll handle the publication in one publication and set the date of hearing for Monday, July 20th, please. Questions there at all?
Do we have a motion to acknowledge?
I moved that we accept applications for Dakota State alcohol license.
Second.
Set that date of hearing, please.
Oops.
Set the date of hearing for.
July 20th?
Yeah, July 20th.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks again, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And gal.
I'll second that, Jen.
Yes.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under old business, and that, we are an hour late, and I apologize for that, but the hearing upon the application for the sale of alcoholic beverages retail on and off malt beverage license application for the Happy Hour LLC.
Okay, publication has been done. Mr. Beckman is applying for an RB license, which is a retail on-off sale malt beverage license at 201 South Egan Avenue. Questions?
Any
for him?
questions at all? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to
Approve, please.
Approve.
approve the retail on-off sale malt beverage license application for Happy Hour LLC.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Ron, for continuing business in that area and doing your work there.
Mhm.
So, thank you.
You know what it's going to be, don't you?
Yeah, golf.
heard- Yep,
Yes, golf simulation. Very good.
good luck with it.
Thank you. Hearing upon application for the sale of alcoholic beverages, temporary alcohol license application, DSU Foundation.
I'll
And
make
this
a
in here is a second reading from the one that was presented previously.
We acknowledged this one earlier. This
Yes.
was the first one that came through our office. Yes, the date of the event here is July 11th. Also a wedding dance.
I'll make a motion to approve temporary alcohol license application for Dakota State University Foundation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under new business, declare as surplus property, appoint appraisers, and set a bid date, bid number 838 for brass meter bodies. Fred, do you have anything you want to add to that?
We had recently, this last week or so, got rid of a small amount of these meters. We've decided since then to turn around and actually try to get rid of the entire lot, so we're just gonna open it up and bid them all out. See what bid and see what we get.
Okay,
July 22nd.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll make a motion to declare surplus property and appoint appraisers. Let's see, Jeremiah Corbin, Fred Snodderly, and Kim Verhey.
Second.
We have a-
For,
You gotta have a date.
I'm not done
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, no, you're
okay.
You
Set a
swing it.
bid date of July 22nd for 838 brass meter bodies.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Approve specifications and set a bid date, bid number 839 for the fuel system improvements at the Madison Municipal Airport. And I'm going to ask Chad if he wants to speak, and then I'm going to ask Morris if there's more that he wants to add.
Okay, thank you. Yes, this is the item that's been discussed for quite some time, most recently about April 27, when the commission wanted authorized proceeding with the design of this project. The specs are prepared and ready to bid. This is anticipated for bid opening and award in July for construction this year of the new fuel system. That has been talked about. The cost estimate is estimated between, the total project, so between 250 and 300,000, with 20% being able to be reimbursed through the state, through the Aeronautics Commission. That is it. Is the main thing I'd just like to say about that right now.
Morris?
Well, it's when we designed this, and Mayor Lindsay and Chad were at the airport, and we looked, but we're setting it up so that eventually we can, taxi all the way around it. And right now, we're just getting the fuel system in so we can sell fuel. And, so that's why, part of the reason why the fuel, pumps were moved a ways down from the original one. It costs more to do that, but in the long run, in the future, it actually makes it more usable.
Yep, and we've spent a goodly amount of time visiting with pilots and others in that are involved in the use of it as well. So I've been very, very pleased and very happy with the, process and the progress that we're making on it.
This is for the credit card.
That's correct.
pumps. We are selling fuel today, it's just it's not with a
Yeah.
credit card.
They come inside and pay with their credit card, but now.
They have to come in and find you and.
Well,
if
and
it's-
then there's paperwork that we have to bring down to the city every Monday. And
It's
that's-
very manual, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
lots of work.
And this not only involves the credit card, but it also, the pumps are being moved further away from the city building out there, and they're also being turned from a north-south to an east-west direction, and that will allow clearance on both sides of the pump for planes to eventually, in the future, circle the pumps. It will allow planes to keep moving forward. Currently, they have to pull in and then manually be pushed back away from the pumps. So it makes the whole process much safer and, as well.
I-
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, you first.
Yeah, just, and it's a credit card, computerized system will be
Mhm.
direct to a computer in the finance office, and there's also a fuel management system, or excuse me, fuel monitoring system in there where the level of the tanks will be able to monitored for not only the filling purposes for the vendor, but also for leak detections and such like that. That is intended to be as part, on the same computer piped over there to the finance office.
Okay. This money's coming from this year's budget? We had some discussion about that. It's a
We
lot
have.
of money.
It is. Unbudgeted, which of course is not the way we like to operate, but
Exactly.
we've been working on it. If I use an estimate of about $280,000 for a project, 60,000, up to 60,000, correct, Chad, will come from a grant from
Yes.
South Dakota Aeronautics, which is wonderful help. Planning on using contingency. We've got that nice line item in our fund, in our general fund, which is called contingency. Normally, those dollars are used for any overages within other departments and things like this, just unbudgeted projects that happen. Okay, we do have $170,000 in contingency. I hate to speak for all of it, but at this point, we can plan on that, or at least using the majority of that, of those dollars. We also had $38,750 that we got in a land payment from Randy Weezy for the airport land out there. We did not budget for that last year, if you will remember, because of the environmental assessment. We didn't know if that cropping was gonna happen. We played devil's advocate. We didn't budget for that, and we were able to maintain it, so that also helps. Chad and I looked at some figures again this afternoon, and the overshort that we expect from the 2015 project, which isn't happening the way it was budgeted for over a year ago, we'll have about $31,000 there. So we can float this with the use of those dollars there.
And so we better hope Fred's equipment doesn't break down,
Yep,
or the PD has something that they need, or the fire truck from the fire hall doesn't.
yep, that is correct.
It's kinda like a year ago when we got hit with the gen plant requirement.
Yeah, well, that was 300.
That wasn't general funds though, was it?
Nope, that was
No.
after.
No, that was,
But right, and unanticipated.
but it was
at the time.
unanticipated, that's all I meant.
Oh, I don't know.
You'll have another chance, you know, if you choose to authorize today, you'll have another chance, of course, when the bids are opening, whether you want to proceed with the project.
Sure.
Just so you're aware of that.
And hopefully the bids
I-
would come in under the estimate.
Correct.
You know, I guess, 100%, this credit card reader should have been put in probably 10 years ago, you know, even as much as 5 years ago. I mean, they were real common and popular 5 years ago, and I think we will sell more fuel having it. I think it'll help, and a much more convenient thing for our pilots, okay? I think it also improves the look and feel of our airport. I will maybe challenge you with this, is the word I want to use. The parts and pieces of broken airplanes that are sitting out around by our existing tanks, in my opinion, it's a safety hazard, and I think those need to be removed.
Oh,
Even,
definitely.
even just from a beautification standpoint.
Yep.
There's a trailer house that's out on that property. I think that those type of things need to either be tucked away inside of somebody's hangar or something, but they shouldn't be out there. If, last time you were here, you were telling us these people with jets wanna fly in and do all this, and then the first thing they see is the salvage yard. And that, to me, you know, what was it, about 8 million? The
Yes.
improvements that we're putting into this airport, I don't think it's unfair for us to ask for it to be cleaned up.
Oh, no, the mayor and I had already discussed that, and as soon as I can get in there with the tractor to lift those up, we're gonna do it, but it's a little soft back there right now, and I didn't wanna tear it up. And the camper, I just bought that, and I was fixing it up, and it's gonna go up north.
Okay,
So,
not just remove that now, don't do it again, is what I'm saying, okay? Because it needs to be, again, we're putting $8 million into this thing. I think it's not unfair to ask that it looks beautiful and that it's as nice and clean as possible.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Okay,
Yeah.
how soon can I expect that?
Well, the camper will be out of there, all of it by the weekend, yep.
Okay. Cool. And I've talked a little bit with Fred about this as well, even just from the, you know, mowing and help. I mean, we've had a lot of discussions on it in the past too, as a commission and with you as far as just the maintaining and the, you know, and part of it is the building that we have there now is awesome. I mean, it's a great lounge for the pilots to relax and prepare to fly whoever they flew in, fly them home, you know, and that. So I just want to keep building on that. So, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
So, do we have a motion and a bid date?
July 21st?
21st at 2 PM.
I'd approve specifications and set the bid date for bid number 839, fuel system improvements in Madison Airport, Madison Municipal Airport. See, July 21st, 2 PM?
Correct.
Yes.
So, there it is.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Number 3, authorize the use of the restricted use site building maintenance reserve, overhead door electric operator. Fred, would you address this one?
Yes, we picked that compactor up about 1.5 years ago, and we sat there and done some work. We actually did some in-house work on the existing restricted use building. We pulled the office area out of there, done some serious measuring and some finagling out there. We can actually get both the compactor and the dozer crawler in that building during the winter. Basically keep those out of the elements, keep them warm, ready to go. What this is I'm asking you to authorize that I spend up to $6,000 out of that reserve. I want to put a new door on the west side, and then what we're going to do is move the existing door over to the east side, do some modifications there. So we're thinking that, $6,000 will cover that, and then we'll have some openers on that. But that, in the long run, we talked a couple years ago about actually having to put a bigger building up there. So I think in the long run, it's going to save us a lot of money. $6,000 investment is going to save us in excess of about $60,000 to put up a building that would house both those and heat it. So I think it's going to be money well spent with your permission and approval.
Okay, very good.
How much do we have in that reserve?
$28,000.
Thank you.
I think that should come out of the budget this next year. I don't like taking into the reserves like that, because of the simple fact that if something would happen out there to the building, it'd catch on fire, we need some of this money here to put some kind of a building back out. I think since we're working on the budget, I just feel that should be a budget item.
And
But
next
that
year's
puts it in,
budget
that
doesn't
puts a
start
whole
until
year away from
January.
being done,
Yeah, it does.
and then it leaves the equipment out all winter.
And that's actually.
That
what
would
we
be
set
the-
reserves aside for, is to either improve or put up a bigger building, but by doing this, we don't have to
Here-
put up a
here-
bigger
Yeah,
building.
I understand what you're asking, but it puts it a whole year out, and
Here's-
I guess I'd prefer it being inside.
Here's what we
To the
can
winter.
do to solve that, Bob, and the way that this works is, and I agree, everybody's hot on the budget right now, because we're starting to talk about it and starting to deal with it. Let's pay for it now out of this reserve, and then in our budget, put the
Budget
same
6,000
amount,
back.
budget it right back into
Put it back into.
Yeah,
the
budget it
building
back in.
fund. That'd
So
be-
then we'll get the building, plus we'll keep, feeding back into that reserve.
Maintain that reserve.
Because we keep digging into our reserves and not making a budget, pretty soon, we're gonna be sitting there.
Well,
high
and
dry.
typically, you know, like when we talked about the project we just were addressing, dealing with the airport, I visited with Chad, and he has done a great job over the years, putting 20,000 a year in and maintaining that budget growth, so that now, when the construction starts hitting it, the dollars that we need are there, but it hasn't come in one big chunk. So, no,
But I'm not.
very good.
I'm not arguing or anything, I
No.
just wanna,
Nope, totally understood.
so.
Nope, totally understood.
So I want $6,000 of that reserve, right?
Yes, up to $6,000 from the reserve.
I'd move that we authorize the use of up to $6,000 of the restricted use site building maintenance reserve for the overhead door and electric operator.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, those are the general items and that, and we have here on here an executive session. So,
I move to move into executive session.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to move into executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will take just a couple minutes and that if anyone wants to use the restroom. And that.